está? Buenos días. ¿Cómo está? Fantástico. Me alegro mucho. Buenos días.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dear permanent representatives and delegations from each of the member states of the OAS. We are verifying with the Secretariat that we do have quorum.
Verificado el quórum.
Since we have verified quorum through the Secretariat, I hereby declare open the special session of the Permanent Council convened pursuant to Paragraph B, Article 37 of the Rules of Procedure at the request of the Permanent Mission of Guatemala. Through a note distributed as document CP/inf.10728/25 with the objective, I quote, of analyzing the serious threats to constitutional and democratic order in Guatemala. With that in mind, pursuant to Article 43 of the Rules of Procedure, I submit for consideration of the Permanent Council the draft order of business as contained in document CP/OD-2568/2.
De no haber observaciones.
I see no request for the floor, and so it is hereby adopted.
Antes de proceder,
Before we continue, I would like to express on behalf of the Permanent Council our most sincere condolences and expressions of solidarity to the delegations of Jamaica, Haiti, Panama, and the Dominican Republic, as well as the entire Caribbean region, which has been impacted, as well as the governments and peoples of these member states for the unfortunate losses of human lives and damage caused by Hurricane Melissa. The Permanent Council expresses its support to these brotherly nations during this painful time. Additionally, and with special consideration for the intervention by the Foreign Minister of Guatemala, I'd like to request that, if necessary, the delegations agree to an exceptional dispensation to the intervention maximum time pursuant to Article 46 of the Rules of Procedure. For specific cases, at the request of the delegations of the Dominican Republic and Antigua and Barbuda, I also like to ask the Permanent Council if we can grant, if necessary, a similar dispensation to the Foreign Minister of the Dominican Republic, who is with us virtually at today's session, as well as Ambassador Sanders, the permanent representative of Antigua and Barbuda.
de no haber objeción,
If there are no objections, it is agreed.
vamos al siguiente punto del orden.
Next item on the order of business. Now, for consideration of the next item on the order of business, I am pleased to give a warm welcome to His Excellency Ambassador Carlos Ramiro Martinez Alvarado, the Minister of Foreign Relations of the Republic of Guatemala. Your Excellency, welcome once again to the Permanent Council of the OAS, and I give you the floor.
Buenos días.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair of the Permanent Council, Ambassador Tomas Pascual, Secretary General, Madam Assistant Secretary General, honorable representatives of member states, delegates. I'm honored to speak to this Permanent Council on behalf of the government of the Republic of Guatemala and President Bernardo Arevalo. Thank you so much for this timely convening of today's special session of the Permanent Council requested by my country in order to discuss the very serious situation faced by our nation, which is a threat to institutional stability, constitutional order, and continuity of the democratic process. Over the last several days, we have seen a series of arbitrary, illegitimate acts by operators in the justice system, judges, and the prosecutor's office aimed at twisting around the results of general elections from 2023 and refusing to recognize the popular will expressed at the polls, as well as refusing to allow legitimately elected people chosen by the Guatemalan people, including representatives, mayors, the vice president, and the very president of the republic, from being in office. We express our sincere concern following the resolutions from the 24th of October 2025 by the 7th Chamber Criminal Court, in which they attempted to clarify the supposed total voiding of this election won by the Semilla party, which has already been made official by the Supreme Electoral Court through Decree 5/2023. These steps have been declared illegal by the Constitutional Court as of yesterday, and there is an amparo that has been issued to prevent execution of that decision issued by the court on the 14th of December 2023. In that sense, we have noted that the judge has been warned that he should abstain from making any illegal constitutional decisions in his rulings that would undermine the Republican representative electoral system of the state, considering the results of the election, end quote. Further, the ruling by the court warns the judge to avoid any acts that would be considered contempt of court and which would present a threat to the constitutional order. We note that the ruling prevents this risk to the democratic order, and this is a threat to constitutional order in violation of the principle of the independence of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, the supremacy of the Supreme Court, and the separation of powers. Additionally, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, in a press conference, stated that elected positions cannot be taken away and that the results from 2023 have been ratified. It was noted that the positions chosen by popular will cannot be nullified, as they have been validated by the Constitutional Court as well as the Supreme Court of Justice. This was a legally concluded electoral process that cannot be turned back. We also note the positive reactions from the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, that we are concerned by the constant danger presented by the prosecutor's office and courts that have been co-opted, as I already noted, which aim to provoke a political crisis and destabilize the government. This is a huge source of concern. One example of this is the statements that have been falsified and made up by the public prosecutor's office in the case known as the UN Office of Services for UNAP's project, which is linked to supposed illegal business, including fully irresponsible accusations. And the prosecutor's office under Consuelo Porras has carried out 24 investigations for supposed acts of corruption from government ministries under President Arevalo. Yet, this very institution has not shown any progress in the over 300 reports made by the executive branch against the prior administration. And this contradiction highlights the role of the Attorney General's office, which is abusing its power in order to undermine the administration. And we also see new accusations that are unfounded against President Arevalo and the Vice President. The recent acts are a serious attempt to violate democratic institutionality through the use of the criminal courts and political persecution. And this is against public officials, civil servants, civil rights, human rights leaders, indigenous leaders, and others, attempting to name legitimately elected officials and present an obstacle for the next year. This situation is a direct threat to everything achieved by the OAS Charter and the Inter-American Democratic Charter, particularly those related to defending the constitutional order, the independence of state powers, and holding free, fair, transparent elections. In this context, on the night of Sunday, the 26th of October last, President Arevalo, on a national channel, denounced the activities by a criminal group that has been deemed as such by the executive branch, which I quote, seeks to perpetuate impunity upon seeing its ill-acquired property attacked by justice, undermining the state, end quote. And we have seen prosecutors, operators of justice, human rights officers, journalists, and others tortured, jailed, and exiled. Also, indigenous leaders. During his speech last Sunday, the president mentioned two relevant cases, two individuals that are in prison. One is Mr. Luis Pacheco, the Minister of Sustainable Development, and indigenous representative who attended protests in 2023, as well as Jose Mora, an outstanding journalist who is internationally recognized. We note that since 2023, this Permanent Council and the General Secretariat of the OAS have supported the efforts we have made to strengthen democracy in Guatemala constantly and expressed their concern with the abuses carried out by members of the justice system attempting to turn around the results of the election and deny popular will. This international support has been essential in maintaining democracy, and it's worth noting that the U.S. government and the EU, Canada, Colombia, and the UK have imposed sanctions on the prosecutor's office, its close circle, and judges responsible for unfounded rulings, which notes that the international community is also concerned with the attempts at reverting the results of the election and promoting impunity in cases of serious corruption. Similarly, reports from the electoral mission from 2023 and the special observation mission for electing judiciary authorities note the persistent attempts to destabilize Guatemala's democracy, and that lawfare is the mechanism by which this is being carried out, with the aim of promoting their own candidates and intimidating authorities responsible for these cases. Against this backdrop, I'd like to remind you that during the visit in situ by the IACHR in July last year, there were observations expressing concern with the series of activities and arbitrary acts on the part of the prosecutor's office and supported by the judiciary, which are a threat and threaten to nullify the popular will expressed at the election. And this seriously compromises progress achieved and deserves the attention of this Permanent Council, given the attempts at promoting a technical coup in Guatemala with lawfare. And this is what we are experiencing right now, the abuse of the judiciary, pretending to do everything legally, and no one is above popular will, and that is why we condemn the use of lawfare as a tool to undermine elected governments. Against this backdrop, the Guatemalan government is thankful for the communique from the OAS Secretary General expressing concern with the recent events in the country and reiterating the importance of preserving the operations of democratic institutions based on the Constitution and the rule of law. With regard to the will of the Guatemalan people who expressed themselves at the 2023 elections, and pursuant to the OAS electoral observations, which freely and openly elected President Arevalo. We value the support of all national stakeholders aimed at maintaining stability and institutional dialogue, and we reiterate our willingness to continue to work with this organization to strengthen democracy, transparency, and justice. Thank you also for the statements by the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, ECLAC, and other states that have expressed support for democracy in my country. This solidarity and support is a clear show of the region's commitment to preserving institutionality, popular will, and the principles enshrined in the Inter-American Democratic Charter. sending a robust message that any attempt at undermining democracy in our country will not be tolerated. Our government reiterates its commitment to democracy, the rule of law, and the fight against corruption. Our country has begun a wide-ranging process for institutional recovery in the framework of respecting the law and sovereign will from the Guatemalan people. Months ago, we requested that the OAS send a special mission for strengthening democratic institutions. The main task of this is supporting processes for elections of judges at the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, of the Constitutional Court, of the General Prosecutor's Office, as well as processes expected for the coming year, with the aim of ensuring transparent, participative processes pursuant to democratic principles and the rule of law. We hope that this permanent council will be able to support Guatemala with this special mission. Against this backdrop, we highlight the importance of the OAS and each and every member states. We hope that you will continue to support the Guatemalan people and government in defending democracy, the separation of powers, and respect for human rights. The elections for next year, 2026, of various authorities, as I already mentioned, including judges for the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, the Constitutional Court, the Prosecutor's Office, the Comptroller, San Carlos, the National University, and others, are crucial. This is an opportunity to cooperate between institutions and not allow corrupt groups to carry out their activities. In 2023, we consolidated democracy, and we have a responsibility to ensure that the coming elections responds to the will of our citizens and not to a system of mafias. Guatemala is a hemispheric cause, and we believe in the solidarity of member states of this organization in ensuring that the sovereign will of the people, justice, and freedom prevail over attempts at authoritarianism and impunity. As noted by the President in his recent statements, from our perspective, this isn't just the current presidency at play. What is at play is the very foundation of democracy, respect for the sovereign will of the people, the opportunity to leave behind a regime of corruption which my country has suffered from for decades, and building the nation that the good Guatemalan people deserve. A Guatemala that recognizes the rights of all individuals, which allows us to ensure well-being, democracy, freedom, and transparency. With that in mind, we would like to submit a draft statement that reflects the topics addressed in this session to reiterate the commitment of our member states with ensuring constitutional order and democracy in Guatemala. The text will be shared in a timely fashion, and we invite member states of the OAS to provide their support with a view toward adoption at the upcoming regular session of this council for the 5th of November 2025. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your presentation and for submitting for consideration by this Permanent Council the information that you have shared with us with regard to this situation. We have taken due note. Now, I would like to give the floor to the delegations that would like to refer to the topic that brings us together today. And if I may, I would like to salute and give the use of the floor, first of all, to His Excellency Roberto Alvarez, the Foreign Minister of the Dominican Republic, who is with us virtually. If everyone agrees, Your Excellency, welcome once again to the Permanent Council, and I give you the floor. Ambassador Pascual, Chair of the Permanent Council, Carlos Ramiro Martinez Alvarado, Foreign Minister of Guatemala, Secretary General Ramdin, Laura Hill, ASG, distinguished representatives. First of all, thank you for the expressions of solidarity from the Chair of the Permanent Council with regard to the horrific events caused by Hurricane Melissa. The damage was extensive, and we express our solidarity to countries such as Haiti, Jamaica, and others who have been deeply affected by this horrific climate event. The Dominican government would like to express as robustly as possible its solidarity with the people of Guatemala, and we express our support for President Arevalo, the legitimately elected president in August 2023. This was an election recognized by electoral observation missions. They were free, fair, and transparent. We recognize and are grateful for the Foreign Minister of Guatemala, Carlos Ramiro Martinez Alvarado, and we take due note of the current situation. We also join the efforts of member states and the General Secretariat in supporting Guatemala through this peaceful democratic process, respectful of constitutional order, with full attachment to the rule of law and separation of powers. Through aiming to carry out activities already declared illegitimate, as noted by the Foreign Minister, to vacate the elections of the President and Vice President of the Republic, as well as other popularly elected positions, is a violation of the sovereignty of the people of Guatemala and the essential principles enshrined in the Inter-American Democratic Charter. As noted, Luis Abinader, the president of the Dominican Republic, no state can be above the legitimacy expressed freely by popular will. Therefore, and as already noted in other cases in our region, the DR does not recognize a de facto government that stems from a breakdown of the constitutional order. The Dominican government believes that the Inter-American Democratic Charter is much more than a legal text. This is a collective promise of solidarity, an active promise to preserve, defend, and strengthen democracy. This is a promise honored not only with statements, but through timely, firm actions in the framework of our mechanisms. In that sense, we support the efforts by the Secretary General and the Permanent Council, and we express our inter-American support at the request of the Guatemalan government to contribute to resolving the situation pursuant to the Guatemalan Constitution and the Inter-American Democratic Charter. We remind you of the words of Octavio Paz, who stated that without democracy, freedom is just an idea. Chair, the Guatemalan people has repeatedly shown its civic maturity and its determination to defend its democracy. This example confirms that the peoples of the Americas aspire to live in freedom, with justice, transparent institutions, and legitimate governments. The hemispheric community cannot and should not stand by indifferently before attempts at breaking down the institutionality of Guatemala or in any other country of the continent. Therefore, we must support them in all tools through the OAS Charter as well as the Inter-American Democratic Charter, in the hands of our organization, which allows us to support the Guatemalan government in defending democracy during this critical moment. Expressing our concern is not enough. We need to act firmly and swiftly within inter-American law. The legitimacy of a free, sovereign vote is sacred. Defending it is a legal duty, a political and moral duty as well. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias al
Thank you to to the Foreign Minister of the Dominican Republic for his intervention. And now I would like to give the floor to the permanent representative of Antigua and Barbuda. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. May I first greet the distinguished Foreign Minister of Guatemala. It is good to see you here, sir, in the Hall of the Americas, though I regret the circumstances that required your presence. Mr. Chairman, 2 years ago, I served where you are sitting now as the President of this Council. At that time, I proposed that we authorize the then Secretary General to accompany Guatemala's 2023 elections under the Inter-American Democratic Charter. The government of Guatemala agreed. That joint decision made the OAS a partner for democracy at a very difficult hour. Under that mandate, I traveled to Guatemala twice. In December 2023, I met President Gamate, the Constitutional Court, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, and President-elect Bernardo Arevalo. The government gave written consent under Article 18 of the Charter for the OAS to remain engaged. In January 2024, I returned with 4 ambassadorial colleagues, the ambassadors of Brazil, the ambassador of Mexico, and the ambassador of El Salvador. All 3 of them are here today. We went to witness the peaceful transfer of power to President Arevalo and Vice President Karen Herrera. That transfer was certified by the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, endorsed by the Constitutional Court, and welcomed across the hemisphere. At that time, the Constitutional Court said 3 very simple things. First, once the election results are certified, no authority may suspend a political party or change those results. Second, any official who tries to do so faces civil and criminal liability. Third, there was no constitutional breakdown in Guatemala. Recent events have put those principles to the test. Judge Freddy Orellana and Attorney General Consuelo Porras, as well as others in the public ministry, acted to undo the 2023 result. They declared the governing Semilla movement void. They moved to strip the president, the vice president, and 23 deputies of their legitimacy. They pursued cases against officials, journalists, and indigenous leaders who defended the vote. This is the very excessive judicialization about which we warned in this Council in 2023, when both Porras and Orellana were pursuing the same political purposes disguised as law enforcement. This is law weaponized to reverse the people's will. It is lawfare. Fortunately, we saw the Constitutional Court act to correct this misconduct yesterday, as the Foreign Minister pointed out. Yesterday, the court issued a communiqué reaffirming its ruling of December 14, 2023. It said that the acts of Judge Orellana threaten democracy, popular sovereignty, and constitutional order. It declared his resolutions void and without legal effect, including the supposed nullification of Semilla. It warned him to stop actions that violate the Constitution. And it repeated that the results of the 2023 elections are unalterable. We welcome this decision. It shows that Guatemala still has judicial guardians who will stand up for the Constitution. But, sir, a ruling is only the start. Now comes the test of full compliance and real protection for those who have been targeted. We ask this Council to join the request made by the Guatemalan government for us to assist to issue a statement that first restates the basic truth: the 2023 elections are the only legitimate democratic mandate in Guatemala. Second, the statement should recognize the Constitutional Court's communique as the controlling constitutional guidance. Third, the statement should denounce lawfare clearly and by name, condemning the abuse of prosecutorial and judicial power used to overturn the certified will of the electorate. And fourth, the statement should mandate the Secretary General to deploy a high-level mission under Articles 17 and 18 of the Democratic Charter in consultation with this Council and with the government of Guatemala to do three things. First, verify compliance with the Constitutional Court's ruling. Second, monitor and report any reprisals or renewed lawfare. And third, propose confidence-building steps that strengthen judicial independence and protect the integrity of future electoral processes. Colleagues, in the second half of 2023, this organization stood with Guatemala to secure a peaceful transition. Yesterday, Guatemala's highest court stood again for that same democratic principle. Our job now must be to make sure the court's ruling is respected in practice, not only on paper. This is the choice before us. Either we draw a firm hemispheric line against lawfare, or by failing to condemn it, we invite its imitation elsewhere. We should choose the line drawn by the Guatemalan people at the ballot box and reaffirmed yesterday by the Constitutional Court. There must be no doubt where the OAS stands. We must be seen to stand for democracy, for justice, and for the sovereign will of the Guatemalan people, and against lawfare in any guise. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Antigua and Barbuda. We have taken due note, and we will be submitting the draft declaration of Guatemala to the Permanent Council when we receive it. And in keeping with the rules of procedure, we are now going to reinstall the rules of procedure with respect to the limit, or time limit, of interventions. And now Paraguay is recognized. Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, allow me to express my solidarity of my people and government to those affected by Melissa, Jamaica, Haiti, Bahamas, and the Dominican Republic. Above all, we greet the Foreign Relations Minister, Carlos Ramiro Martinez Alvarado. Thank you very much for your report, and it's an honor to have you here with us at this meeting of the Permanent Council. Minister, Chair, the delegation of Paraguay wants to express its concern about what has happened in recent days in the Republic of Guatemala. The constitutional president, Bernardo Alvaro, has denounced attempts to undermine the democracy there and the Constitution, and for this reason, this meeting has been convened. We want to analyze the abuses of the use of criminal law to unduly influence electoral outcomes in 2023 and attempts to undermine the elected officials that are in power now, and also to undermine elections in 2026. We must express our responsibility and our support for the government, and we believe that there could be attempts to undermine the constitutional order by prosecutorial and judicial officials. And so we want to recall that in 2023, there were elections, and we had an OAS election mission, observation mission that went. This was requested by Guatemala. And the observation mission said that there was respect for popular will and that there were fair, free, and transparent elections. And it alerted, however, and expressed its concern about judicialization of the electoral process and the threats to the electoral process. At the same time, the missions led up by the former Secretary General of the OAS also supported what the electoral mission observation had noted. And with this backdrop, we reaffirm what this Permanent Council affirmed in its resolution, which was adopted 15 November, in which we condemned any attempt to undermine the electoral process and the democratic transition. I would like to recall that Santiago Peña was in this country in 2024, and he helped overcome tensions that were clear during the swearing-in of President Arevalo. Other delegations from other countries also supported the constitutional order, and this allowed for the president-elect to be sworn in. Today, more than ever, it is essential to defend in Guatemala the pillars of democracy and representative democracies, the holding of free and fair elections and upholding the results thereof, respecting the rule of law, the separation of powers, and also fundamental freedoms and human rights. So we welcome the recent ruling of the Constitutional Court of Guatemala, which issued a communique on 29 October, and it reaffirms the constitutional order and the electoral results of 2023. This is an important step forward to defend the rule of law, the separation of powers, and the respect of popular will. Chair, Paraguay expresses its solidarity with the people and the government of Guatemala and exhorts that the constitutional order be maintained as well as democratic order in keeping with the OAS Charter and the Inter-American Democratic Charter. At the same time, we urge the Secretary General and the competent bodies of the organization to continue to support the government of Guatemala in keeping with its mandates in order to contribute to dialogue, strengthening of the rule of law and democracy. We reiterate our compromise and commitment, to democracy for peace, justice, and development of our peoples. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paraguay. Thank you for your intervention. And Belize has the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. His Excellency Carlos Ramiro Martinez, Foreign Minister of the Republic of Guatemala, Mr. Secretary General, Chair of the Permanent Council, distinguished ambassadors and colleagues. Our delegation thanks the distinguished Foreign Minister of Guatemala for his delegation's presentation, and to the Chair of the Permanent Council for convening this special session. Belize takes note with concern the report on recent developments that have prompted the government of Guatemala to recommend this special session of the Permanent Council. Belize recognizes that said developments may carry grave implications for the constitutional and democratic order in Guatemala, our Central American neighbor. The right to democracy and the obligation to promote and defend it are unambiguously set out in the Inter-American Democratic Charter. The existence of provisions which allow for member states to refer matters to the Permanent Council of the OAS is a reminder of our collective responsibility to treat these matters with the highest importance. Mr. Chair, Belize strongly believes that democracy and the rule of law are inseparable to the permanence of peace, stability, and security in the hemisphere. Our region's progress on the protection of fundamental rights, collective security, and integral development depend on strong democracies. Threats to democracy demand this organization's close attention, as any disruption to these core principles not only undermines the affected member state, but also reverberates across the entire region. In this regard, Mr. Chair, Belize urges the immediate cessation of all actions that seek to impede the fundamental right to democracy, the rule of law, and the proper function of democratic institutions. Chair, while recognizing that these are complex and evolving issues, my delegation reaffirms its steadfast support for established democratic principles, stability, and the rule of law. Belize remains closely engaged in monitoring developments and supports the OAS's efforts to strengthen democracy and the rule of law in Guatemala. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Muchas
Thank you very much, Belize. I now give the floor to Uruguay. Ambassador. Thank you, Chair. Uruguay would like to join with the expressions of solidarity to Bahamas, Jamaica, Haiti, and Dominican Republic, countries affected by Hurricane Melissa. Foreign Minister Carlos Ramiro Martinez Alvarado, who I had the honor of meeting in Montevideo during our presidency's swearing in. We appreciate this special meeting of the Permanent Council to study the serious situation in our brother country, Guatemala. We are very concerned about what the minister said, and we reiterate the importance of being able to address the problem here. In keeping with the OAS Charter and Article 17 of the Inter-American Democratic Charter is the legal framework to defend and promote democracy in our hemisphere. The Inter-American judicial framework is important here because it complements civil rights, political rights, and social rights, which are enshrined in the American Convention on Human Rights, as well as the respect of the people, which are expressed in free and fair elections. So we appreciate that Guatemala has said that they are under threat to their institutional democracy, and that is why they have asked for this meeting to be convened. We want to reiterate that popular will must be respected in Guatemala, and this was expressed in free and fair elections in 2023. Bernardo Arevalo was elected as a result. And this was a transparent and representative process. This was the opinion of the international community and the OAS observation mission. We also are alarmed about the systematic use of criminal law against human rights defenders, judges, and journalists, among others. These kinds of prosecutions, such as in the case of Ruben Zamora, include putting someone in prison because of their opinions is a violation of human rights, undermine democracy and freedom of expression. We welcome the decision of the Constitutional Court that was just mentioned, and which ruled null and void these attempts to undermine the constitutional order. And we join with the court to continue to monitor the situation until institutions like the public ministry are led up by someone else through elections next year. I believe that we have a latent threat that we must pay attention to. We believe that any attempt to revert the electoral process and to use institutions for political gain must stop immediately. This is undermining the institutions in Guatemala. We believe that it is important that we continue to monitor the situation for the sake of having the institutions function well and to uphold the Constitution, democratic order, and the rule of law. Thank you very much. I thank Uruguay. And now Brazil has the floor. Ambassador?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation to the Minister of Foreign Relations of Guatemala, Carlos Ramiro Martinez. Thank you very much. Since 2023, this Permanent Council has been following the political situation and contributing to ensuring democracy in Guatemala, and we have had participations from the Permanent Council's mission, which visited to Guatemala during and after the election of President Arevalo, and we've been demonstrating the support of member states for democracy and respect for popular will. We are extremely concerned with the persistent attempts at destabilization. We reiterate against this backdrop the declaration of ECLAC on the situation in Guatemala, which was given on the 28th of October, which expresses deep concern with these events and potential implications they may have for democracy in that country. These activities show a pattern of political persecution of legitimately elected officials and attempting to undermine the political process. This has been underway for over 2 years now. In December 2023, we adopted the resolution 1240 in response to the situation, and no one debates fighting corruption, as this is fundamental to ensuring democracy, and these are objectives that must be achieved with full respect for democratic principles, and any political instrumentalization of that agenda by state entities must be condemned as it corrodes away at democracy. And we reiterate that the will of the Guatemalan people expressed during the 2023 elections must be respected. We urge all stakeholders to set parameters for Guatemala to preserve the rule of law and democracy, and we also salute the designation by the Secretary General Albert Ramden of a special mission to strengthen democratic institutions in Guatemala, with the expression of continued support to promote democracy in that country. And the Secretary General must maintain the Permanent Council informed of the situation in Guatemala, and with that special mission. Guatemala was a success story. It brought together all member states to support justice and democracy and effectively ensure respect for the popular will. This was a unique case which must be studied, as the activities of the OAS were very successful in ensuring respect for the will of the people at the elections. And we moved from dialogue with all social stakeholders and authorities to bring spaces for consensus. We've always had open channels for all, but without losing sight of the fact that we must be firm with attempts at destabilization, wherever they may come from, as they fritter away at democracy and rule of law in Guatemala. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Brazil, for your intervention. Mexico has the floor. Ambassador. Thank you, Chair. My delegation welcomes the Foreign Minister, Carlos Ramiro Martinez, and we join with the expressions of concern of the international community given recent events in our brother nation, Guatemala. And we have taken note of the resolution that was issued yesterday by the Constitutional Court, which reaffirms once again the validity of the electoral outcomes of the democratic process in 2023. And at the invitation of Guatemala, and together with distinguished ambassadors from Antigua and Barbuda, Brazil, United States, and El Salvador, Mexico had the honor to be part of the special mission of the Permanent Council of the OAS that accompanied the transition process that took place in 2024, January 2024, to facilitate dialogue between different political actors and to contribute to a transition of administration that was peaceful. And we reiterate our desire that the institutions of the Guatemalan state fully respect the constitutional order and the popular will expressed at the polls during the general elections that took place in 2023. And the outcome reflects the sovereign exercise of the people of Guatemala. The state of Mexico, based on the OAS Charter and the Inter-American Democratic Charter, recognizes that representative government is is absolutely necessary for the stability of the region. And the states have capacity to consolidate representative democracy, respecting the principle of non-intervention. In keeping with the guiding principles of our policies, especially self-determination of peoples, non-intervention, and peaceful resolution of disputes. We want to support the institutional stability and constructive dialogue between different actors in Guatemala. Any model of democracy must be in keeping with the principles of international law. Mexico reaffirms our historic friendship with Guatemala. We have long-standing ties, and we believe that democratic maturity will prevail, or certainly we hope so. And thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Mexico, for your intervention. Now, Bolivia has the floor. Ambassador. Thank you very much, Chair. We thank the distinguished delegation of Guatemala for asking for this meeting to be convened, and we also welcome Foreign Minister Carlos Ramirez Martinez at this meeting. We share the concern about the systematic threats which are jeopardizing democratic order in Guatemala, expressed by the Guatemalan people. And we support the OAS Secretary General's communique that was published on 26 October. And on 24 October, Judge Fede Orellano ruled that the Movimiento Semilla party was null and void to try to dispossess certain elected officials of their authority, including the president, vice president, and 23 other elected officials, without taking into account that the Constitutional Court on 14 December 2023 already stated that no action could alter the electoral process, and ordered all officials to respect the exercise of the rule of law and the electoral process. This year, Bernardo Arevalo addressed his people just some days ago to talk about the threats to the constitutional and democratic order, and that the judiciary is being used in an undue way to persecute indigenous people, judges, and others. And this effort is being led up by Judge Fede Orellana and Attorney General Consuelo Porras, and that they are judicially persecuting different officials and are trying to undermine institutions like the electoral process. And they are trying to undermine the judiciary. Yesterday, we learned that the Constitutional Court reaffirmed its ruling of December 14, 2023, and declared that the judge's resolution was void and without legal effect. The defense of democracy is a principle that cannot be renounced, and all peoples who fight for justice understand this. We have seen different attempts to undermine the democratic process, and we must be firm in defending the process. Therefore, it is concerning that the public ministry and different judges are looking to ignore the popular will of people expressed in the polls, trying to declare null and void a party and thereby dispossess elected officials of their authority is unconstitutional. In that sense, we alert that the undue use of the judicial system for these ends is a grave threat to the constitutional order and democratic institutions which are protected by the OAS Charter and the Inter-American Democratic Charter. Finally, Chair, we propose that the OAS continue to support democracy in Guatemala, reaffirming the hemispheric support of the rule of law as a principle of the inter-American system. In this framework, we welcome that Mr. Klavich is with us and that he met with President Arevalo to discuss what has been going on in the country. And we think that this is a step towards looking to support and strengthen democracy in Bolivia. We're going through a political transition in keeping with full respect for democracy. We support Bernardo Arevalo. We support the popular will of the people to live in democracy, and we condemn any attempt to alter the constitutional order, and we will be supporting the Guatemalan people and its government. Thank you very much, Bolivia. Now, Canada has the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Minister Carlos Martinez Alvarado, colleagues, I would first of all like to express all of our condolences to those affected and those who have lost their homes, loved ones, and livelihoods following Hurricane Melissa. We would like to express our solidarity with the larger Caribbean community, and we are following the situation very closely. Canada has been working with its humanitarian partners for providing support and coordinated interventions in order to assist affected populations. And we are standing with you during the most difficult times.
Guatemala. Canada welcomes this special meeting of the Permanent Council. The OAS plays a critical role in upholding democratic norms and promoting democratic governance in the region. We are deeply concerned by efforts to undermine Guatemala's democratic institutions and the legitimacy of its elected government. The will of the Guatemalan people must be respected. In that regard, Canada acknowledges yesterday's resolution of Guatemala's Constitutional Court upholding the results of the 2023 election. International observation missions, including the OAS Electoral Observation Mission, found that Guatemala's 2023 elections were conducted in a free, transparent, and legitimate manner, despite significant political polarization and attempts to undermine the process. The OAS Department of Electoral Cooperation and Observation, Electoral Observation Mission in Guatemala, played an important role in safeguarding the integrity of this democratic process. We were proud to support efforts to strengthen electoral systems and combat disinformation in preparation for the elections. At this critical time, it is essential that the OAS member states come together and uphold our commitment to the principles of the Inter-American Democratic Charter and raise a unified voice in defense of democracy in Guatemala. We remain actively engaged in supporting Guatemala's democratic institutions and inclusive governments. In fact, the Ambassador of Canada in Guatemala has been engaging with key democratic actors and institutional leaders to secure the commitment to nomination processes that are transparent, timely, and fully aligned with the Guatemalan Constitution. To support these efforts, Canada is funding a local initiative that will monitor the nomination processes and promote public accountability. In coordination with international partners, Canada has imposed sanctions on individuals in Guatemala responsible for corruption and gross human rights abuses. These existing measures reflect Canada's commitments to defending democracy, the rule of law, and the rules-based international order. Canada also promotes inclusive political participation, particularly among Indigenous women at both national and local levels. We reiterate our unwavering commitment to democracy, human rights, the rule of law, both globally and in the Americas. We thank the OAS for facilitating this meeting and providing OAS member states with an opportunity to express their solidarity with the people of Guatemala. We also take note of the statement by the OAS General Secretary of October 26, and we pledge our commitment to any further initiative in support of Guatemala's legitimate, democratically elected government. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now, Argentina is recognized. Chair, thank you for organizing this special session of the Permanent Council, and warm, respectful greetings to the Foreign Minister of Guatemala. We also warmly greet the Foreign Minister of the Dominican Republic, Chair. It is a healthy practice for us to not judicialize politics and not politicize justice. That healthy practice is easier said than done. But democratic institutionality that is robust, based on separation of powers, are the instruments of a democratic system to ensuring checks and balances, which are sine qua non. And in this region, we have regimes that do not respect the OAS Democratic Charter. They systematically violate human rights, and we see cases of forced disappearances, violations of the institutions of asylum and consular guarantees. The responsibility of the OAS is not to be silent in the face of these violations. It is fundamental for us at the OAS to also act with an early warning system in order to prevent countries with governments that have been democratically elected being threatened from the outside or within their countries. The Argentine delegation would like to give special thanks to the Foreign Minister of Guatemala for his presence and for having requested this special session to address this topic, because not only is it an opportunity for us as member states to support the Guatemalan democratic system, this is also an opportunity to act as an early warning system to promote democracy and prevent new authoritarian dictatorial regimes. My delegation gives special recognition to the declaration of the Secretary General of the OAS, Albert Ramdin, promoting solidarity with the democratic government of Guatemala, demonstrating that it's not the diplomacy of silence, but rather raising our voice in the face of any threat to our democracies. Chair, please allow me to conclude by stating that defending the existence of democratic governments in our hemisphere is not a violation of the principle of non-intervention, but it is a legal moral of all signatories to the Inter-American Democratic Charter, which is understanding that the existence of authoritarian dictatorial regimes in our continent represent a threat against our democracies. We must maintain this act of solidarity with Guatemala and with any other case which may occur. And let's be aware, as long as we have governments in our hemisphere that violate the democratic charter, the same represent a threat to our democracies. The OAS must be the voice of those who don't have a voice, who continue to face torture, arbitrary detention, and forced disappearances, forced to leave their own countries to save their lives. Argentina reiterates its commitment to Guatemala's democracy, and we will continue to raise our voice for those who are unable to do so. Thank you very much, Chair.
Muchas gracias, Argentina.
Thank you to Argentina for your intervention, and now we will give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The United States welcomes this discussion and thanks Guatemala for calling us all here today. The United States and Guatemala have a strong partnership working together to eliminate illegal immigration, combat narcotics trafficking and terrorist criminal organizations such as Barrio 18, counter malign influence in our region, and promote the prosperity of our two countries. The United States reaffirms its commitment to a democratic Guatemala. We call on Guatemalan institutions and other responsible actors to work together on ensuring the continued stability of the strong partnership we have forged with the Guatemalan government. Under President Trump's leadership, the United States seeks to strengthen institutions, protect fundamental freedoms, and defend and reinforce electoral integrity. And we will continue to protect the U.S. homeland by advancing shared security and prosperity objectives with President Arevalos' government. Thank you.
Gracias, Estados Unidos, por su
Thank you to the United States for your intervention. Colombia.
Señor presidente, mi delegación.
Thank you, Chair. We extend our greetings to the head table, and thank you very much to the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Guatemala for his presentation. Similarly, we express our solidarity with all countries affected by Hurricane Melissa this week. We have attended this special session with great concern. Frittering away at public powers and democratic order are threats that we must take on decisively. And in Guatemala, we see the risks of what our democracies face when lawfare is used against legitimately elected officials. Since 2023, we have been warning in this very room about the risks of institutional manipulation, which attempted to prevent the inauguration of the president and vice president-elect. And thanks to the Constitutional Court, the citizens' mobilization, and support from the OAS, as well as regional leaders, including President Gustavo Petro, we were able to ensure guarantees for the legitimacy of the election and popular will. And as stated by our president, democracy is much more than voting. It's ensuring rights, strengthening institutions, protecting citizens in the face of abuses of power. This statement underscores the need to protect democratically elected leaders in the face of attempts at criminalization and delegitimization. Between 2023 and 2025, we have seen a pattern of criminal persecution against judges, prosecutors, human rights defenders, journalists, and representatives of indigenous communities in Guatemala, with the aim of blocking renewal of judicial authorities, sowing the seeds of lack of trust and obstacles to justice. And we see that a judge has declared null and void the Semilla Movement Party and tried to undo the results of the election. And this phenomenon raises the alarm about how internal and external actors may instrumentalize the judiciary in order to threaten elected officials and delegitimize the citizens' will. And we must protect these authorities. It is crucial, as their persecution undermines citizens' trust and the rule of law, as well as stability. And reports from the EOM in 2023 and the Special Observation Mission in 2024 have documented systematic attempts at destabilization, and they've issued recommendations to preserve the legitimacy of elections and judicial processes. Against this backdrop, the election of new judges is particularly relevant, and an independent judiciary ensures trust in institutions, protects democracy in the face of abuses of power. And the OAS has supported these processes by promoting criteria for transparency and impartiality to strengthen the legitimacy of legal nominations and the rule of law. We strongly believe that capturing institutions erodes away at citizens' trust. It expands inequality and undermines regional stability. The experience of Guatemala reminds us all that independent justice is necessary to strengthen democracies. And we urge member states to provide assistance to Guatemala in defending democratic order. Defending democracy in Guatemala means defending it throughout the entire continent. Fortunately, yesterday, we saw the statement from the Constitutional Court of Guatemala, which is a decisive step toward safeguarding constitutional order by nullifying the decision by the 7th Chamber Criminal Court. The higher court reiterated that those steps were a threat to the right to elect and be elected, to democracy and popular sovereignty, reminding us that the election cannot be altered. Colombia reiterates its support to the people and legitimate government of Guatemala. From the OAS, we must continue working to ensure that the institutions are transparent and impartial and pursuant to citizens' will. The criminalization of democratically elected leaders and human rights defenders is not something we will tolerate. Finally, we must recognize that this threat is not exclusive to Guatemala. Defending institutionality and judicial independence, as well as the protection of elected leaders, is a shared responsibility for all people of the hemisphere, and the international community has a responsibility to act with robust decisiveness against any attempt at destabilizing democracy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Colombia, for your statement. Peru, please. Thank you, Chair. Please allow me, first of all, to express the solidarity of Peru with the Caribbean states that have suffered the recent effects of Hurricane Melissa. Now, getting into the issue that brings us together today, my delegation salutes and thanks His Excellency Carlos Ramiro Martinez, the Foreign Minister of Guatemala. Thank you for taking part in today's session of the Permanent Council and for your clear presentation, which highlights the efforts underway by your government to address the challenges faced by your country. From Peru, we continue to closely monitor the political events in Guatemala, and we recognize that this country is going through a crucial period. These decisions and results may have a significant impact on democracy and preserving institutional order. We reiterate the importance of maintaining at all times democratic institutionality balance, a separation and independence of government powers with strict respect for the Constitution and Guatemalan law. Similarly, we would like to highlight that political parties are an organized expression of society, and they play an essential role in any democracy. Recognizing them and their operations are intrinsically linked to the regulatory framework and electoral system for every state, and strengthening them is key for consolidating democracy. The OAS has played a fundamental role in supporting states around the hemisphere. And against that backdrop, we salute the assistance and support provided to Guatemala through the statements and resolutions adopted during 2023 and 2024, as well as the missions at the invitation of the government, which have contributed to strengthening democracy and Guatemalan institutions. Peru maintains a long, fruitful bilateral relationship with Guatemala, sustained on friendship, cooperation, and shared commitment to democratic values. In the last several years, both countries have expressed their will to strengthen and diversify this relationship. Against that backdrop, we reiterate our support for the democratic process in Guatemala and our willingness to continue to support Guatemala's efforts to consolidate governability, development, and institutionality. Finally, we express our sincere desire to see the situation in Guatemala be addressed by transparent, open, inclusive dialogue to consider the popular will, respect for internal order, and fundamental freedoms, as well as human rights for all citizens. Chair, please allow me to conclude by reiterating at the special session of the Permanent Council the strong commitment of Peru to multilateralism, to strengthening democracy and cooperation in our hemisphere in line with the principles of the OAS Charter and the Inter-American Democratic Charter. Thank you very much, Chair.
Muchas gracias, Perú, por su intervención.
Thank you, Peru. Panama is now recognized. Thank you, Chair. I would like to begin by expressing our greetings from Panama to the Foreign Minister of Guatemala, His Excellency Carlos Ramiro Martinez. Thank you very much for his presentation, and we have taken due note. Also, we express our solidarity to the countries impacted by Hurricane Melissa. The Panamanian delegation would like to thank you for convening this special session to address a situation that deserves our shared analysis and attention, and we're here to look at the threats to democratic institutionality in Guatemala. And in this context, we express our support for President Arevalo and the people of Guatemala. This support is based on our sustained commitment to defending democratic values in our region, which is a commitment that is part of our foreign policy in Panama, as well as the principles of the Inter-American system. The request of Guatemala to this council deserves our careful consideration. When a democratically elected president expresses concern with regard to institutional stability and describes activities that may impact constitutional order, the OAS has a responsibility to study the situation and provide its support. In 2023, the people of Guatemala exercised their right to vote. The OAS, through its special electoral observation missions, accompanied, supported, and validated that. They elected President Arevalo as their president. Activities related to the Semilla movement and legal questioning of the electoral results, as well as situations that have impacted civil services, human rights defenders, and journalists, are reason for concern, and they deserve our attention. This concern has increased when we see that some of these activities stem from institutions that are supposed to ensure justice and legality. The trust in the judiciary is fundamental for democratic stability, and any perception of politicization of the judiciary must be carefully studied. The international community has continued to closely follow these events, and various stakeholders have expressed their observations with regard to the administration of justice in Guatemala. The OAS has shared reports from its EOMs, and this information allows us to better understand the situation at hand. Additionally, we consider it relevant to look at the process of renewing judiciary authorities for next month, when Guatemala will also be electing an attorney general and judges for the Constitutional Court, as well as the comptroller and judges for the Supreme Electoral Tribunal. And this is something that hasn't happened so broadly since 1996. It's an important opportunity to strengthen the independence and credibility of the judiciary in Guatemala. The current context is particularly important when it comes to this institutional renewal process that's coming up. And we have had a consistent position in Panama. In January 2024, we took part in the joint declaration supporting President Arevalo and Guatemalan democracy. This commitment is maintained under President Molino. Chair, we believe it's important for the Permanent Council to, first of all, reiterate the legitimacy of the government of President Arevalo as expressed at the polls in 2023, and also express our concern with any activity that may undermine institutions and the democratic and constitutional order in that country. Third, provide support for the judiciary elections in 2026 to ensure the principles of democracy. And fourth, express a message of support for democratic institutionality in Guatemala, reiterating that the international community remains committed to democratic strengthening. Guatemala is a valuable member state in this organization, and SELEC democratic stability, building peace, and transparency is essential in our region, and we have a duty to support this process whenever democratic institutions must be strengthened. The people of Guatemala aspire legitimately to live in a country where their electoral will is respected, where institutions act independently, and justice is a rule of law and not on behalf of specific interests. We will continue to support this legitimate aspiration, and we continue to support the democratic strengthening of Guatemala, because by doing this, we reiterate our own democratic values and thus contribute to the well-being of our entire hemisphere. Thank you very much. Thank you, Panama, for your intervention. We take note of the request to the Permanent Council that this be channeled through the declaration. And now Costa Rica is recognized. Ambassador. Thank you very much, Chair. Minister Martinez, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, Permanent Representatives, observers. I'm honored to speak to you, to thank you for presenting this. Foreign Minister Martinez, and we note the situation faced by the Brotherly Republic of Guatemala. And please allow me to read the official communique issued by the President of the Republic of Costa Rica on the 27th of October 2025, entitled, Support for Democracy in Guatemala. I quote, "The government of the Republic of Costa Rica expresses its robust support for the democratic government of President Bernardo Arevalo and for the brave people of Guatemala, who today are facing a clear attempt at a coup d'etat on the part of some sectors and components of the judiciary in that country. No institution is above sovereign will of the people expressed through a sacred suffrage. It's unacceptable for interest groups and anti-democratic actors to instrumentalize or weaponize institutionality and courts, that is lawfare, in order to undermine democracy. Costa Rica has called on the people of Guatemala to the Organization of American States and the international community so that together we can defend the principles of democracy, separation of powers, and respect for electoral results." End quote. Chair, Costa Rica reiterates in this forum once again our staunch commitment to democracy, the rule of law, the separation of powers, and the integrity of electoral processes in the Americas. Thank you very much. Thank you, Costa Rica, for your intervention. Ecuador is now recognized. Ambassador. I think that the line has been very clear. The OAS is making a statement. It has made a statement. We support Guatemala as a democracy. We support President Bernardo Arevalo, who was democratically elected in elections recognized in 2023. Beyond that, Chair, Secretary General, Madam Secretary General, we would like to express welcome to the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Guatemala, Ambassador Carlos Ramiro Martinez Alvarado. This is a regional forum. It's a space for dialogue. It's a space for listening, as stated by the Inter-American Democratic Charter. The people of the Americas have the right to democracy, and their governments have the obligation to promote and defend it. And I underscore that their governments have the obligation to promote and defend it. Ecuador respects institutionality in the 2023 elections, as I already stated, which declared the legitimate winner of that election, Bernardo Arevalo de Leon. And we believe that the spirit of hemispheric cooperation must continue to support the efforts of this permanent council to always promote peace, democratic coexistence, and harmonious relations between states. And with that in mind, we reiterate our willingness to prudently and respectfully accompany any initiative aimed at strengthening institutionality in Guatemala and democracy as well. We salute the decision to work alongside civil society in Guatemala with independent, transparent functions and clear ethical lines to fight any type of undermining or violation, and we welcome any constructive spaces. And so we join the proposal of Brazil to build spaces of convergence from the political and legal standpoint, where we need open debates and the certainty of non-exercise of lawfare to undermine the Constitution. Finally, Ecuador would like to urge internal mechanisms, including those from the Constitutional Court from yesterday, allow us to overcome this episode by strengthening order in Guatemala. We are very pleased with the good sense of various instruments of the OAS and its missions, as well as the appropriate response of those who are at the helm of the Permanent Council and the OAS when it comes to building potential bridges to seeking solutions in the state of Guatemala. Thank you very much for providing us with this democratic space and democratic lines that have been clearly drawn. This is a space that stems from the most genuine purpose of integration. Welcome, and thank you for contributing to our mission. Welcome to the Foreign Minister of Guatemala, and you have our full support. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for your intervention, Ecuador. And now, Honduras. Please go ahead.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, my delegation would like to express its solidarity with the countries that have recently been impacted by Hurricane Melissa. We wish you a speedy recovery. When you read a book, I don't know why, but you take it for granted now. But a few days ago, I was reading the book from Ambassador Jose Fiallo, who is now in Costa Rica, but was previously here at the OAS, right when the crisis in 2023 happened in Guatemala. And he says in his book that Guatemala, with its beating Mayan heritage and a sense of contradictions in 2023 emerged as the scene of a confrontation that led to electoral spillover, and we saw a clear expression of popular will at the polls, but this was undermined from the institutional powers by efforts and powers that were weaponized in order to undermine popular and sovereign will. And in this context, every document, every resolution, every single vote here at the OAS became an act of affirmation or evasion on either a bridge or a stone throne. When we see that, we believe that things are over because he's talking about it as if it were the past. But in fact, I'm personally surprised. Just a few days ago, I realized that this, in fact, is still the reality in Guatemala. It hasn't been overcome. But I have had solidarity from all of the countries here, including our own president, Xiomara Castro, who was there that night during the elections. And she appeared there with other ministers and presidents the next day, expressing solidarity also through her Twitter account and others. And so if we see all of this, it's not just Guatemala. This is something that we are seeing as part of a formula. It's not something that applies to every country, but it is the case in many. And we see a lot of parallels. And it's important to note this, that just 1 month away from the elections in Honduras, our country, and I'm saying this as the head of this delegation, for example, at the OAS, we have given total openness so that anyone can go check, observe, whatever verb you want to use for the elections in Honduras. However, the opposition for some time now has been trying to use lawfare and claim that the elections won't be free, that we don't want to leave power, and this is totally false. Why? So that the same thing happens as what just happened in Guatemala. They are attacking a government so that it cannot operate. And one way of being within Guatemala is that they don't care about the interests of the Guatemalan people. And this is also what we see happening in Honduras, so that they cannot do their job. And then at the upcoming elections, present this government as something that didn't do anything, that didn't work. But really, that is the conspiracy. And they are looking beyond whether something is going to happen, whether there could be a coup. This is something that we suffered in Honduras in our own recent history, and it's something that can happen to any country, and I hope that the lesson has been learned. And so my government, under President Castro, has expressed its full solidarity with democracy in Guatemala, with the legitimate President Arevalo, and we very much welcome Carlos Ramiro as a friend, although it's in unfortunate circumstances, but we stand with you in Guatemala. Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, Honduras. Now, Chile has the floor. Chile would like to join with the expressions of condolences to Haiti, Panama, Jamaica, Bahamas for loss of life and property. Foreign Minister of Guatemala, we express our solidarity with the government and people of Guatemala, and we thank you for asking for the convening of this meeting, and we thank you for the report given. We welcome the ruling of the Constitutional Court, which reaffirms the constitutional order in Guatemala and the unalterable nature of the electoral process. We hope that this will bring an end to a very difficult chapter in Guatemala, so that officials can consolidate governance and democracy in the country. We reiterate our upholding of democracy and the popular will, because this is necessary for harmonious and peaceful coexistence. We are concerned about this trend we see of using lawfare, which weakens institutions, erodes trust in government, and is a threat to the rule of law and democracy. At the same time, we also join with those who are concerned about the persecution of, for example, José Rubén Zamora and others, which is an example of using the judicial branch for horrible purposes. We believe that we cannot resolve problems by weakening institutions, rather by making them stronger through accountability, transparency. So we must have resolution within democracy using institutions and principles, because this is the legitimate way to do things. So we urge all institutional and political actors in Guatemala to use dialogue and to respect popular will and the separation of powers in order to strengthen the rule of law, democracy. We express our willingness to continue to support and strengthen democratic institutions in Guatemala with other states here. Thank you very much for your intervention. Haiti has the floor now. Thank you, Chair. Well, I would like to begin by thanking those states that have expressed their condolences to those states affected by the hurricane, Bahamas, Jamaica, and my own nation, among others. We have suffered great losses and damage. We have had floods that have destroyed a different infrastructure, that have killed people. And I would like to greet the Foreign Minister of Guatemala. And I thank him for drawing our attention to what is going on in his country. It is clear that democracy is under assault in Guatemala. This is threatening the stability in that country, and it is questioning the popular will that was expressed in the polls. Haiti supports all initiatives that would be taken by our organization, for example, to send a mission to support democracy in that country. The politicization of justice is a danger for democratic values that we all share at this organization, and which this should be condemned. It is our duty collectively to support the government and people of Guatemala. We also sympathize because Haiti is in a very difficult situation and is having a hard time strengthening its institutions. And so we feel great solidarity with Guatemala. And Guatemala has sent officials to our country to try to help us. Guatemala can count on Haiti's support. Thank you very much. Thank you, Haiti, for your intervention. Now, the Observer Mission of Spain has the floor. Thank you very much, Chair. We would like to join with those who have expressed their condolences, and we want to express our solidarity to the victims of those affected by Hurricane Melissa. I want to welcome Foreign Minister Carlos Ramiro Martinez Alvarado for coming here to the OAS and for reading his report to us. Foreign Minister, democracy is not a destiny. It's not somewhere you go. It is something that you are always building. We are also concerned, like Secretary General Albert Ramdin, and we call upon all actors to contribute to maintaining stability and institutional dialogue in order to strengthen democracy and to preserve constitutional order in Guatemala. I want to recall that Spain supported the electoral observation mission to Guatemala in 2023 for the general elections that took place legitimately when Bernardo Arévalo was elected as constitutional president. In that difficult democratic transition, my country clearly spoke many times, and we said that we supported democratic institutions in Guatemala. Today, we reiterate that commitment because that episode was not just a one-off. Challenges persist, And for that reason, the international community, and specifically Spain, continues to support the government and people of Guatemala in their firm will to uphold democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. In that sense, currently Spain supports the special mission for electoral observation of judicial elections that will take place. In 2024, we contributed at a financial level to the mechanism to follow up through the IACHR in Guatemala that allowed for a betterment with respect to recommendations as far as human rights are concerned that the Commission addressed to Guatemala in order to have better compliance. And that has contributed to allowing Guatemala to leave Chapter 4 of the annual report of the IACHR. And that is work that we thank the government of Bernardo Arévalo for. There are other key steps that need to be taken. The peace, for example, the peacekeeping mission in the adjacency zone between Guatemala and Belize. This is an OAS mission. We believe that Guatemala has firm and respectful support of Spain in its path towards a more inclusive, fair, and democratic nation. Thank you, Spain. I thank you for your intervention. And now, the observer mission of France has the floor. Thank you very much, Chair, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, Minister of Foreign Relations from Guatemala, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to join with those who have expressed solidarity to the member states who have been affected by Hurricane Melissa. I also, before I speak about different topics, to read what the European Union has said about the situation in Guatemala. Thank you. France, first of all. France has been following very closely the recent events in Guatemala and its effects on democracy and institution. France and the European Union have mobilized to support democracy in Guatemala since the 2023 elections, and the electoral outcomes were supported and declared inalterable by the Constitutional Court. The observation mission from the EU and the OAS have said that the elections were free and fair. France has expressed itself several times here in the framework of the transition, for example, and also we supported the swearing in of Bernardo Arévalo, and we urged everyone to respect democratic institutions in Guatemala. After that, the commitment of France and the EU have never ever weakened. Since January 2024, we have tried to have those who are undermining democracy and the rule of law render accounts. Given the persistence of threats, we have then strengthened sanctions against certain people. We have been coordinating with our partners in the EU and also the group of G13 in Guatemala. And I would like to also greet the decisive actions of OAS to stabilize Guatemala, and we support this. France also provides financial support to the election mission for judicial elections that will take place. France is determined to support reforms that have been begun by the Arévalo administration. He is the clear winner of the elections thanks to the popular will of his people, and France supports him. Thank you. For the European Union.
Welcomes the resolution of the Constitutional Court of 29 of October, reverting the ruling on the annulment of political party Movimiento Semilla, whilst confirming the validity and legality of the 2023 election results. Nevertheless, the EU sees with concern the continued attempts to undermine the democratic order and the rule of law in Guatemala, including through legal actions taken by the General Prosecutor's Office and other members of the judiciary against several government officials. The EU has repeatedly voiced its concern over the persistent instrumentalization of the justice system in Guatemala and the persecution or intimidation of public officials, democratically elected authorities, indigenous leaders, civil society, media, and judicial operators. We recall that the Council has imposed restrictive measures on 8 individuals and 1 entity for actions undermining democracy, the rule of law, and the peaceful transfer of power in Guatemala. These targeted sanctions are designed to hold accountable and affect those responsible for engaging in, providing support for, or benefiting from actions that undermine democracy, the rule of law, or the peaceful transfer of power in Guatemala. The EU has been a consistent partner to all sectors of Guatemalan society invested in the promotion of democracy, the rule of law, and inclusive and sustainable development, and it will remain so. We will continue to follow developments closely, particularly in view of the forthcoming appointments of judicial and electoral authorities in 2026, which represent an historic opportunity to strengthen democratic institutions. Merci.
I thank the permanent observer representative of France, and I thank you for reading that statement from the EU. The permanent observer mission of Italy now has the floor. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I wanted to also express our solidarity to the Caribbean countries that were affected by Hurricane Melissa. We thank the Guatemala delegation for convening this special session, and we welcome the Minister of Foreign Relations of Guatemala, Excellency Carlos Ramiro Martinez Alvarado. Italy has followed very closely the unfolding of the events in Guatemala because of our close ties of friendship and our excellent bilateral relations. For many years, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Italy has contributed to the project in the adjacency zone between Guatemala and Belize in order to find a peaceful resolution to this dispute, and we've contributed to mutual confidence-building measures. And we are also ready to support Secretary General Ramdin to partially finance the special mission to monitor the elections and appointments of officials to the Guatemalan judicial system. In this respect, 2026, as we've heard from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Guatemala, will be a crucial year for democracy in this Central American country. And we must uphold guiding principles, those that will lead us down the correct path. And of course, this must be done for the good of the country. We must respect the rule of law and the outcome of the elections that were transparent and fair. Thanks to the mission of the OAS, we believe that dialogue can be open between different actors with respect to the judicial reform. Dialogue is essential to be able to discuss and debate different situation, and also to dispel any violence that must or could happen, rather. In this context, we want to express to the Secretary General that we fully support him. Thank you very much. I thank Italy for its intervention. And now the Secretary General has the floor.
Let me welcome Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Guatemala, Senor Carlos Ramiro Martinez Alvarado, distinguished Chair of the Permanent Council, distinguished permanent representatives. I also recognize the Ambassador of Guatemala to the United States, Assistant Secretary General, our colleagues. Mr. Chairman, before I start, I would like to join you and member states who have expressed solidarity with the people and the governments of the countries severely affected by the passage of Hurricane Melissa. Jamaica, Cuba, the Bahamas, the Dominican Republic have been severely affected by this tremendous hurricane. We also would like to call on all member states and also the permanent observers to assist where possible these countries in their efforts to recover from the impact of Hurricane Melissa. Mr. Chairman, I address you today with a profound sense of responsibility and an unwavering commitment to the principles that unite us all as members of the Organization of American States. And indeed, this is one of those occasions where the value of the OAS as an hemispheric multilateral institution is demonstrated. From its inception, our organization has been guided by a steadfast dedication to promoting and consolidating representative democracy, one of the 4 pillars of the OAS. And we know that fostering and embedding democratic culture and acceptance of the values that go with that, it takes time, efforts, and we always have to struggle in the fight to those who do not want to have that kind of culture embedded. But we must continue. It is within this historical framework that the General Secretariat is closely monitoring recent developments in the Republic of Guatemala. Today's presentation, and I thank him for the comprehensiveness of that presentation by Minister Martinez, offers not only a detailed account of these events, but also a critical reflection on the patterns and consequences related to Guatemalan democracy. Mr. Chair, let me be unequivocal in our opinion. The Organization of American States stands firmly in the defense of democracy, constitutional order, and the sovereign will of the people throughout the hemisphere. These are not just abstract ideals. They are the bedrock of peace and prosperity for all the peoples of the Americas. It is in this context that we reaffirm the importance of safeguarding the full and uninterrupted functioning of democratic institutions in Guatemala in strict adherence to the Constitution and the rule of law. The Guatemalan people exercised their democratic rights in the 2023 general elections, a process conducted with transparency, legitimacy, and integrity. Our observation mission confirmed, and others have done so as well, the credibility of that process, and the results were clear. It is as a result of that legitimacy that President Bernardo Arevalo was elected as president of Guatemala. That democratic decision, in our view, and as has been stated by many of you here today, must be respected by all actors. The recent opinion of the Constitutional Court leaves no doubt, no uncertainty with regard to the legitimacy of the sitting president and the government. Any attempt, therefore, to undermine this mandate affects not only Guatemala's stability, but also the democratic values we collectively in the hemisphere uphold. The General Secretariat calls, therefore, on all political, judicial, and institutional actors to act with responsibility and a genuine commitment to dialogue and to adhere to the democratic principles and the rule of law of the country. The path forward must be one of unity, not of division, of institutional strength, not of eroding political power. Let us also remember the legitimacy of democratic institutions is built on the trust of the people. That trust must be protected and earned daily through actions that uphold the rule of law and respect human rights and foster inclusive and effective governance. It is in this spirit, Mr. Chair, distinguished representative, and in response to Guatemala's request that a special expert mission to support the follow-up of the secondary elections has been designated to visit Guatemala soon with the aim to assist with the strengthening of democratic processes. I want to thank our permanent observers, Spain, France, Sweden, Switzerland, Norway, Italy, and the United Nations as an institution for providing the necessary funds for this mission. Distinguished representatives, this is a moment that demands clarity and unity, and let me repeat, acceptance and respect for democratic processes, and the outcome must be respected. The General Secretariat remains actively engaged in implementing the mandates of member states to protect and strengthen democracy in Guatemala and across the hemisphere. Foreign Minister Martinez, as you have heard today, let me repeat, the OAS stands with the people and the government of Guatemala to safeguard democracy, democratic and institutional order, and to facilitate political stability, peace, economic prosperity, and social progress. I thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, for your intervention. I would like to now give the floor once again to the Foreign Minister, so he may make a brief intervention. You have the floor, sir. Thank you very much, Chair. The reasons for which Guatemala asked for this special session and asked me to come here to this city and to this organization are not very desirable. I would have liked to come here and share with you other things, but the situation that we are undergoing meant I had to come. I'd like to thank the Secretary General for his work, his support, the support of the Secretariat. I, of course, want to thank member states, which since 2023 have been working closely. It's wonderful to see here ambassadors like Ambassador Sander, who came in December 2023 and were involved in that long January 14th during the swearing in, and the member states that have politically supported us, not only with gestures, but also with sanctions and resources, for example, so that this mission that's going to come to Guatemala in some days to strengthen democratic institutions can support us in processes that will take place next year. As one delegation said, it's been 30 years since we haven't had all these institutions having elections, and so that means that we're facing many challenges in 2026. And so the idea is to move forward to have the best results. We're working and thinking about elections in 2027. And so we need to pay close attention to this. I thank member states for their interest. We're going to continue to work closely with you. We hope to visit you for other reasons, but I reiterate the commitment of the administration of President Arevalo with democracy, the rule of law, with respect for human rights, and in the struggle to fight corruption. This last point is what has let the demons out of the box. This is why they're assaulting the governance of our administration, the acts of the administration. But in the long term, we hope to prevail in the interest of our people. Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, Chair of the Permanent Council, and permanent representatives and delegates, thank you so much for this session, which allowed me to share with you the situation that we are experiencing, and we appreciate your solidarity and your support. We are very, very grateful. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Minister. This Permanent Council is and will be always here to welcome you with open arms, to support democracy and to support democracy in any nation here, because that is the cornerstone of our organization. There are no further requests for the floor, so we have concluded the order of business of this special session. The interventions and comments made during the session will be duly reflected in the corresponding minutes. I appreciate the information shared with us by the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Guatemala. We thank him for his presence and participating in this session. This chair appreciates the commitment of member states with the institutions and the strengthening of democracy in Guatemala, and I reiterate that the Permanent Council will be closely following the events that unfold in this brother nation, and I urge all actors to maintain a focus on dialogue and cooperation to contribute to democracy and stability in the country. I thank you for your participation. I thank the Secretary General for his intervention and the Secretariat that has made possible this session, and this session is adjourned.